Welcome back, man. We just had a good 30-minute conversation about life, so it's good catching up with you,
Yeah, well,
Bevis.
you got to warm up in the bullpen, right?
I like it. I like it. Absolutely. So last we talked was really we were talking your time in New York City, everything with the BRC, the Black Rock Coalition, which we can get more into today, and then we really left off with your show at CBGB, or really it was more of a festival at CBGB.
Yeah.
The excuse
Stock,
me.
Stalking Heads of 87.
That's right. Stalking Heads of 87 Festival. And if you want, we can just pick up from there and see where the day goes, man.
Yeah, having met Vernon Reid and Greg Tate and Conda Mason and a whole new cadre of like young black activists in New York City, they had essentially formed the core concept of the Black Rock Coalition. And by the time I became involved actively, my suggestion was maybe we should take this out to the street, take this to the people, and get more notoriety for showcasing, the diversity of African-American talent in the New York area at large. And so with that, subsequently we started playing a lot of public events like at parks in Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, open air events. And the BRC was kind of like a all-star backline, when you think about like late night talk shows like Late Night with Jimmy Fallon or whatever, Johnny Carson, David Letterman, there would be a house band. And when they would have musical guests, it was common for the musical guests to perform live with the talk show house band. So we formed a house band for the Black Rock Coalition, and that was called the Black Rock Coalition Orchestra.
All right.
So ostensibly, I was auditioning for the drum chair, and then I met Will Calhoun, who would later join Vernon Reid with Living Color. And because I was already a front man, it just made more sense for me to, maintain that posture. Because what we were doing was putting on kind of like a review to where there would be, multiple stand-up performers with this really solid, dynamic house band, so to speak, And so that gave us the ability to, migrate to different nightclubs and this, that, and the other thing without a great deal of consternation, as opposed to everybody having to worry about getting rehearsal space for their song or this, that, and the other thing. The house band was just flexible enough and agile enough to where they could basically adopt everybody's material and then support that particular front person, with the with a powerful presentation, and that started a buzz along the journalistic front, so to speak, because it basically created the essence of a movement, right? As opposed to just being focused on one particular entertainer,
right,
or one particular, band, right? It's kind of showed like, okay, well, there is a broad diversity to this quote unquote Black rock expression, so to speak. It's got a lot of different shapes and colors and angles, and it's not like a cookie cutter type of sound, which was ostensibly our mission, was to show the dynamic scale of diversity from the perspective of Black entertainers. So we got an opportunity to do a 2-night stand at CBGB, and we were fixated on CBGB because it was kind of like ground zero for punk rock and new wave in New York, alongside another venue that had faded by then called the Mud Club. There was an era where before punk rock, let's say if we're going all the way back to the early 70s, like 70 to 73, maybe 74, the hotbed of New York City underground music would have been like Max's Kansas City. Max's Kansas City was like a showcase for bands a whole what I call the first wave of eclectic countercultural rock bands like the New York Dolls.
Right. Okay.
Who were like the precursors to punk in general, right? Iggy Pop, when he moved from Detroit to New York, that was kind of his home base, Max's Kansas City, right? There was just a whole heavy underground scene burgeoning in New York City as early as 1970, 71, 72, 73. And Max's Kansas City was kind of also like a hangout for the underground elite, right? Because it was a place where Andy Warhol would like to come and bring the factory crew, and they would all hang out in the quote unquote back room, and there was a little bit of a velvet rope type situation as to who's allowed in the back room or not, and if you were in the back room, that's where all the magic was happening. That's where all the cool kids were. That's where the dirt was going down, you know what I'm saying? And everybody had the right connections, and drugs and all that stuff was going on.
Yeah.
So everybody wanted to be there.
Yeah.
For sure.
It was a place to be.
Yeah. So even all the elite, the upper echelon people, like Mick Jagger or John Lennon and all these type of people always wanted to go to Max's because that's where the real stuff was going down. So having said that, before CBGBs really kind of became notorious because of the success of the first wave of the constituents that used to play there, and when you had the Ramones, and then shortly thereafter you had Talking Heads, and you had Blondie, and all of these bands, blew up.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? And so now they've all got deals and have moved on, and of course then Max is closed, and then the Mud Club opened up right about the same time as all the activity in England started to really froth over. You know what I'm saying? So you had that going on simultaneously. And this is before I ever went to New York, right? So Mud Club, by the time I got to New York in 1983, 84, Mud Club was over. There was a whole new slate, of venues. The CBGB was still kind of like what I call the cornerstone for the punk rock movement. And so because it was so notorious in that regard, there was a panache about it, right? And so one thing that we liked about CBGB was the Bad Brains had essentially broken out of CBGB. And I think I mentioned to you that the Bad Brains were like the precursors to like Living Colour or Fishbone or any of those things. They were like probably what I call the godfathers of hardcore, right?
So you were looking to follow in their footsteps?
Not necessarily their footsteps, but just basically the fact that they had already kind of opened the door.
Right.
You know what I mean? Hilly Crystal, the guy that owned and booked CBGBs, was like very discerning about who would play at CBGBs. It wasn't like you could just roll up and it didn't matter who your manager was or who your label was. If he didn't want you there, you weren't playing there.
Okay.
You feel me?
Yeah.
But he had a good rapport with Vernon, and like I said before, they had hosted the Bad Brains, and the Bad Brains, were notorious at CBGBs. You know what I'm saying? It was like, oh my God. So to fast forward, the idea was February of 1987. By then, we had a really good eclectic assortment, of artists and talents. And we kind of knew who had like the edge, and who was going to be viable for a really good presentation, and who was, and by the same token, there was going to be enough variety to where it wasn't going to be just the sound of one hand clapping. There was going to be a really great mixture of talent, So I was invited to participate on the second night, and I was basically going to take the slot before Living Colour played, right? And I had to bring my guitar. I had been bringing my guitarist, Chris Bailey, from Austin up to New York frequently to record anyway. And so I just said, okay, well, this makes sense. I'll just import Chris from Austin And then I'll organize a house band for myself here, since I already had, connections. By then I was in the studio and I knew people. Put together this nice unit with a great drummer named Mark Gilmore and a great bass player named Oscar Brown III, whose dad was like a legendary jazz musician named Oscar Brown Jr., and Steve Blucher and from DiMarzio Pickups, So anyway, I had my crew, and we rehearsed for this, particular show, right? Because we were going to do, I think, 5 numbers. Everybody that was performing, it was like, you had like a 35, maybe 40-minute set, something like that. Because there was only 4 featured acts each night, spread over 2 days.
Okay.
But what was cool about it was there were no 2 bands exactly alike. Every band was like 180 degrees different than the band before or after, right? And by then, because we had the benefit of Greg Tate, who was, a well-cultivated and well-respected music critic at the Village Voice, right? Greg had disseminated, the news of this event, and we had journalists from all over the world at this event for the 2 nights that we were performing in February. And I recall it was probably 2 of the coldest nights I ever remember in New York City. It was frigid, bro. We sold those nights out. They said that we broke the attendance records of the Talking Heads. There were so many people outside still trying to get in.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And CBGB's is not huge anyway. I mean, it's maybe just a little bit bigger than the Continental Club, if you've ever been to the Continental Club.
Oh, yeah.
CBGB's might hold 400 people.
Yeah.
It's like a boxcar.
Yeah.
Long and narrow. Yeah. With the notorious bathrooms, right? Because the bathrooms didn't have any doors at all. And they were completely, obliterated with graffiti.
Yeah.
Like, you've never seen graffiti in a bathroom like that.
Yeah.
I still haven't to this day, you know. But they had a great sound system there. Like, it was a world-class, what I call high-quality sound system. Front of house was really proficient. And I actually had my engineering buddy from Media Sound, Tim Hadfield, come to, do front of house for our show, So it wasn't the type of thing where you had like long sound checks or this, that, and the other thing. It was literally like,
get up, go.
Get in and get out, hit it and quit it. You know what I'm saying? Because it ain't all about you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like, it was
exactly.
that sort of thing. But apparently we made a big, big splash. And at the end of the night, what was really cool was there was kind of like a all-star jam type situation, and there was Dr. No from the Bad Brains, and there was Michael Hampton from Parliament Funkadelic on guitar. There was just 3 or 4 extra guitar players and a whole bunch of singers. Bernard Fowler, who sings regularly with the Rolling Stones, was there that night. That's when I met him for the first time. And of course, this is 1987. So I just remember it being a very big highlight in my personal life, you know what I'm saying? Because it's like I had found my tribe.
Right, yeah.
After kind of being on the edge of my seat for so many years as a quote-unquote maverick, you know what I'm saying? I had finally found like my community in New York City. And it was just so moving to me that in that period of time between 1984 and 1987, over the course of that arc of that 3 years, that I'd literally gone from only knowing my girlfriend and a couple of other people to now I've got this whole, this whole big community that's like solidified and galvanized and focused on like supporting each other, you know what I'm saying? Because we were all rooting for each other. It wasn't an ego trip like crabs in a barrel, you know what I'm saying? Well, I hope he breaks a string so that I sound better in my set, you know what I'm saying? No, we were all like rooting each other on. And lo and behold, over the course of the subsequent 2 or 3 weeks, people started to get a lot of outreach. So that's where I got my first outreach from this individual, Stan Schneier,
don't want to go home. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. I don't want to get up, and I don't want to have fun. Tired out the old ways, haven't found anyone. I just want to be with you tonight. I just want to hear your voice and watch your eyes. You don't have to.
And he was an attorney, and he was representing another label executive. And I got into this conversation with this gentleman, but there was a situation where the organization was trying to reinitiate like Shelter Records, the label that had people like, it was a very eclectic label. They had Joe Cocker.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of like their big breakout.
Uh-huh.
They had Leon Russell. They had Phoebe Snow, who was big for a few years. And among others, they also were the label that originally signed Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
That is an eclectic mix.
Yeah. And so by the time that we'd gotten into like 1987, that label had folded because they had some sort of tax issue, like tax evasion or something like that, and their original label owner had gotten, prison sentence or something like that. Like it got like really heavy, you know what I mean? And the whole thing imploded. I got this outreach, from this attorney, and he was saying like, well, this label's really interested in you, and would you like to come and take a meeting? That sort of thing. And it was like a kind of a cold call. I don't remember. I didn't meet the individual at face value. It's not like he came to me after the show with a business card or something like that. But the guy's name was Ian Rolfini, and he was a British executive who originally had been a senior VP at Warner Brothers in the United Kingdom. So his resume was pretty stellar because he's the guy that signed like Rod Stewart and the Faces. He's the guy that signed Black Sabbath and a whole litany, of other like, high level superstar acts, you know what I'm saying? Now, by this time, Ian had migrated into like the world of multimedia, right? So he was part of an organization called Viacom.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so his pitch, when I went to meet him, his pitch to me was, well, there's this new format on the horizon that's going to be called a CD.
Yeah.
I said, okay, that's great.
Yeah,
he says,
cool.
and what I'm doing is I'm in the process of negotiating to buy all of Shelter Records' pre-existing catalog so that I can re-release all of that music that was on vinyl on CD.
Wow.
And alongside that, I want to sign 3 new independent acts, and I would like you to be one of them. I said, oh, really? Yeah. So I'm in the East Village, East 4th Street. And the reason I know that is because there was a big Tower record store at 4th and Broadway in the East Village.
Okay.
A big store, like a superstore.
I wonder if it's still there.
Probably not, because Tower Records, I believe, more or less imploded. But what I'm saying is this Tower Records was like the Tower Records in New York City. So this was the one where like all the big superstars, if they had a release and we're doing like a special event,
they were there
for a signing or something like that, that was the one, and it was down the street. So his offices were a few blocks east of that, like in the block of 4th Street. The conversation we had was very warm. He had listened to my demos because I had sent my demos to Stan in advance, his attorney guy that called me.
Yeah.
And Stan passed those on to him, and that's how I got the invitation to the meeting, because he heard the music and was like, oh. Stan had seen me play.
I see.
And he went back to say, man, I saw this kid,
Yeah.
I saw this guy.
Yeah.
And got in his ear about it, and that's how I caught their attention. So on my demo, I had this song called "I Ain't Keith Richard," and it was like a little satirical number that I wrote, kind of in the vein of the Stones era, like "Exile on Main Street." You know, the sound that they had on like "All Down the Line," you know, or "Rocks Off." You know, I wrote this song called "I Ain't Keith Richard" in the vein of Keith Richard.
Gotcha.
Right.
All right. Yeah.
Right. And what I was talking about in the lyrical content was the irony of there were so many artists that were like adopting or enamored of Keith Richards' debaucherous lifestyle.
Yep.
And so that was kind of like the gold standard of rock and roll behavior writ large, right? Meanwhile, at the grassroots street level, you got guys ODing left and right, you know, thinking like, wow, you know, this heroin thing is really going to make me cool.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And the complete opposite is true. Now, I'm not coming from a position of just saying no or, you know, abstinence and none of that stuff, because that's like the pot calling the kettle black, right? I mean, I had polka dots all over my resume. You know what I mean? So all I'm saying was I'm speaking from experience, right? But the idea was I was writing it as a parody to say, yeah, all of you guys, you know, trying to be this pirate don't realize that the pirate has got like a physician on call, so that if, you know, something goes sideways, he's got at least a 50-50 chance of revival, whereas your ass is grass. You know, but it was written in a real high energy, very high, what I call high, it was just a very high spirited piece of music, you know, and the catch line was, I ain't Keith Richard and he ain't me, right? Like that sort of thing, right? Like, you know, I'm trying to go for mine. I'm not trying to do things like this guy or whatever, right? And I'm just using his name, not in any way derisive, right? But just to say, okay, well, if this is the so-called gold standard, I ain't doing that.
Yeah, you're creating separation for yourself.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's that sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
And the reason was, it was inspired by an article that I saw in a magazine called Rock Scene, where they were making comments. I may have mentioned to you in my early formative days, there was a band out of Dallas called the Werewolves that I was particularly fond of, right? They were friends of mine. They were a really great band. And right alongside, let's say, like ZZ Top and Cracker Jack, the Werewolves were one of the best bands that I had ever seen, like, live, right? But they were from Dallas. They would come to Austin to play occasionally. But they were very mysterious because they didn't overexpose themselves at all. They had an idea that if we only play a few times a year, more people will come to see us because they don't get to see us all the time.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. And I adopted that ideology with Banzai Kik, meaning to say I never wanted to be one of those bands that you could just go see next Saturday or next Friday or next Thursday because we're just in a residency.
Yeah.
Well, I would always time our gigs out to maybe you see us once every 3 months. You know what I'm saying? Because it would give us time to create new material and tighten our show and this, that, and the other thing. So every time that we would emerge or reappear, we were a little bit better and stronger
and fresher
than the time that you saw us before.
Yeah.
Right? And I had time to get some different outfits and this, that, and the other thing, right? Anyway, I digress. But what I'm saying is there was this article, the Werewolves had relocated to New York City in 1975.
Okay.
And they got signed by RCA Records, and their manager and producer was actually Andrew Loog Oldham, who was the original manager of the Rolling Stones. And the Werewolves had a style that was very much influenced, let's say, by the Stones to an extent, right? But they were also a bit more eclectic than just that, right? They could do a lot of things well because they had a genius level guitar player named Steve Metter, who was a big influence of mine, and he and I were even roommates for a little while. While I was in Dallas becoming a front man, that sort of thing.
Right.
But the long and short of it was the Werewolves broke out of Texas, went to New York, got a record deal, and people were buzzing about him in New York City is that they eventually might become a thing, like a big thing, right? So their manager was Andrew Loog Oldham, the first manager of the Rolling Stones for the first 6 or 7 Rolling Stones albums, right? Like Andrew was managing the Stones all the way up through High Tides and Green Grass before the Stones broke camp and parted ways with like Alan Klein, right? And became like independent with like Rolling Stone Records.
I see.
Like when Sticky Fingers came out, when they signed a deal with Atlantic that started like their 70s era of like epic Rolling Stones, right? But Andrew was like the guy from day one.
Yeah.
And he was like the same age as them.
Oh, I
right?
see.
So when the Rolling Stones came out with their debut album, Andrew was like 19. Mick Jagger was 19 and Keith Richards was 19. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So here's a guy that had done all of that and then become a producer on his own, and he worked with the Small Faces that eventually became the Faces, that eventually became Humble Pie, right? When Humble Pie became a thing, Andrew signed Humble Pie to their deal with A&M, right?
I see.
So my point is he was a veteran by now.
Yeah, he was in it.
Yeah, and I think the story goes according to Sebe. I think the story goes when the Werewolves moved to Dallas, they had an opportunity to sign with either Andrew Oldham or Tommy Mottola. Now, Tommy Mottola you would know because in the 80s he became like a complete mogul, right? Tommy Mottola was like the guy that was like married to Mariah Carey. The thing was, his big act up to that point was Hall & Oates. So it was kind of a fork in the road. Mm-hmm. And I keep telling you time and time and time, this whole journey is always just about forks in the road and choices. So the Werewolves wound up going with Andrew Oldham for obvious reasons because of his association with the Stones and just the panache that brings. But their record went essentially flat. But the point I was trying to make was there was an article about the Werewolves in this magazine called Rock Scene Magazine, and it was a picture of Sebe, and it said, if this man looks like Keith Richards to you, then you're too old. And that's what made me think of the title, I Ain't Keith Richards, right?
Wow.
Right? Okay. So anyway, Ian said, here's the thing, Bev, if you will give me 90 days to close this deal with Shelter, I just want to give you basically a, let's just say a contingency, right? Yeah. And I'll give you this check for X number of dollars. Mm-hmm. You don't sign with anybody else for 90 days as a placeholder.
Wow.
And if I don't sign in the 90 days, then the deposit is yours.
Yeah.
Regardless. So you got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And if you can hang out, we can make some beautiful music together. That's the expectation. Well, as luck would have it, it didn't quite pan out, because there were some other ramifications to the way that the publishing had disseminated because of some of the artists associated with the label. There was some back end, entanglements, you know what I'm saying? It got really messy. Yeah. And because all these people weren't dead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Even the principal owner of Shelter, Danny Cordell, was still alive. You know what I mean? There were ramifications that just didn't allow him to like close this up nice and tight in time for me to move forward with it or him to offer me a formal contract. Which made me a little sad because the first time at the end of that meeting, right, he said, well, would you like to meet Keith? I said, what? He said, yeah, he lives in the penthouse of this building. And I'm like, you are. I'm like, what? So I catch myself, and I was like, well, Yeah, sure.
Mhm.
I would love to meet him. You know, that sort of
Let
thing.
me check my schedule.
So, you know, he made a phone call and took me up this, you know, private elevator situation. You know what I'm saying? And I met him,
Wow.
and he was cool. He was really nice. You know what I'm saying? Really cool. From what I could see of the penthouse, it was awesome. You know what I'm saying? I tell people all the time,
Okay.
it's like, I don't know what you think, but it looked like a judge lived in there or something, you know, because it was just all oak and marble.
Just pristine everything.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
yeah, except scarves and guitars
Yeah.
just laying around here and there, whatever.
Mhm.
But it wasn't by any, yeah, it was a penthouse, bro.
Yeah. It was a rock and roll penthouse
You know what
in
I
New York
mean?
City in the 70s.
But of course, it's like I'm in this space with somebody that I'd been looking at since I was like 10 years old,
Yeah.
you know? And obviously, I played him the track.
Oh, hell yeah.
And so the takeaway was he was like, you know, that's really, he goes, if you guys can get ready to make a video, I'll do a cameo with you, like that sort of thing.
Wow.
Because he was known to do those sort of things, you know. Keith was cool. He would play with different artists like Tom Waits or, you know, people that he personally liked. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So it was. I'll put it this way: I was on cloud 9 at the end of that afternoon.
How long did that conversation last?
I don't know, maybe 90 minutes.
So I mean, you weren't hanging out. You weren't able to just kick it with them. You went in, did your thing, and had to head out.
Well, you know, essentially, I'm on Ian's coattail,
Right. Yeah.
right? Because we're officially in a meeting, and this is just a little sidebar
Yeah.
because he's his neighbor, and
Yeah.
they've known each other forever.
Oh, by the way, let's go stop at Keith's house and we'll finish what we're doing.
Being executive level, you know,
Yeah.
he's Ian Rolfini. I mean, this is
Yeah.
not like a gopher.
Yeah. This is the guy. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Who else is gonna answer that phone? Right?
Right.
So I don't know. It was just one of those things. But welcome to my world.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, those sort of pinch me moments happened at least a dozen times in my time in New York.
Yeah.
At least a dozen. And that's why I don't like to really get into the name dropping thing so much, because some of it is just so unbelievable. It doesn't even sound feasible.
Well, I mean,
you know?
but it was just your life. I mean, it was just what you were doing.
My point was, it made me feel good that he heard this track
Yeah.
and thought that it was worthwhile. And it was still a demo, even when he was listening to that. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause
Rough.
me being me, if I got the deal and we're going to re-record that song, and I'm going to ask Ian to ask Keith, please come play on this track.
Yeah.
You know what I
Strum a G chord or something.
That's essentially all it was anyway.
Yeah,
If I could, you know, I probably have a version of it on my laptop somewhere if you come over to see me.
Yeah.
Because I haven't ever converted it to an MP3 or anything like that. You know what I'm saying? It was such a weird, eclectic little track, but believe me, it has a Stones imprint. It's Stones DNA. You know what I mean? But having said all of that, things were looking rosy, right? So it was February, March, April, May. By May, I get word that the deal is not going to really culminate, you know? Meanwhile, I'm still plugging away in the studio. So in the interim, a few things have happened. I think Vernon got an overture to come and participate on Mick Jagger's third solo album, which is called Primitive Cool, with Doug Wimbish as the musical director of that session. And that session previously was featuring Jeff Beck and Joe Satriani. Mick Jagger had both of those guys on contract for
Wow.
that session. Jeff Beck had to vacate the session because he had a touring schedule coming up. And Doug Wimbish recommended Vernon Reid come in to fill the slot that Jeff was going to vacate. Now, here's the thing about that. Doug knew that Doug was already contracted to tour with Jeff Beck. When Jeff went, Doug was going with him.
Yeah.
So then Bernard Fowler took over as musical director when Doug and Jeff vacated, right? And I'll round this out for you a little later on, but you'll see that it's kind of like a perfect circle, right? So in comes Vernon to fill in the slot, and it was like Vernon and Joe Satriani, you know, kind of in this binary, you know, guitar slot, however Mick saw fit, you know what I'm saying, for what was going on. But that's how Mick got wind of Vernon, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
In this recording setting.
Yeah.
And subsequent to that, when they wrapped the sessions, May, June, July, sometime in the summer, I think Mick had announced that he had he had agreed to a tour of Japan to promote the album. Like once the album was actually released, and had made an overture to Vernon to come, and you can come on this tour.
Come on tour, yeah.
But by then, Vernon already had another commitment with Elektra Records for material that he had submitted for Living Color. So he was planning the showcase for Elektra overlapping that time, and so he opted out not to go to the tour because he didn't want to disrupt possibility of the label catching him in a live setting.
Seems like that was the right choice.
And that was his priority. Yeah. And it was, well, it was a choice, but it was the choice that he made.
Right. Yeah.
So Mick's like, no biggie. So Joe Satriani went to do the tour.
Yeah. Let me just grab one. Just grab Joe real quick.
So reportedly, now I'm hearing all this from Vernon, right? After the tour, Mick calls Vernon, hey, so how'd that deal work out for you? And of course, Vernon's like, well, it didn't really pan out because they couldn't figure out a marketing plan for an all black rock band. And that's what kind of lit the fuse for the Black Rock Coalition, right? Because Vernon felt burned.
Yeah.
Right? That they had kind of built this expectation up, but at the end of the day, the label kind of dropped the ball with coming up with in other words, they didn't have faith that they could market an all black rock band in the Midwest.
I see.
And he didn't even use that vernacular, but I'm going to spare that.
Yeah.
What I'm just trying to say was, when Mick got wind of that, Mick took offense to it. And he was like, well, you know what? That's BS. I've still got residual studio time on my account. Get with your band, and let's get back here in a month, and I'll produce 3 tracks for you.
Wow.
And that's what set the ball rolling for Living Color's Vivid album, because Ed Stasium was the engineer on Mick Jagger's Primitive Cool.
Okay.
Who recorded the demos with Mick as the producer. Mick, once he's got these tracks in the can, he recorded like Desperate People, Glamour Boys, Which Way to America. I believe those were the 3 songs. Cult of Personality hadn't even been written yet.
Yeah.
That's another story. But he had these 3 pieces in the can, and Mick called Walter Yetnikoff, the president of CBS, and said, I need this band to get a deal.
That was it?
He said, well, I need to see the band, Mick. He's like, that's fine. He goes,
yeah,
Vernon, when are you guys playing again? He says, well, hang on. He calls CBGBs, and Hilly Crystal gives Living Color a date. Vernon tells Mick the date. Mick calls his publicist, says, okay, I want you to tell Rolling Stone magazine I'm going to be at CBGB on X, Y, and Z.
Wow.
Right?
Unbelievable.
And Mick shows up with Walter Yetnikoff at CBGB with this whole cadre of press already primed.
You have the president of CBS Records. You have CBS, you have the Rolling Stones magazine. You have Mick Jagger himself.
Right.
Vernon Reid and Living Color.
Right.
And
a deal gets done.
God. Unbelievable.
So that happens like in the fall.
Okay.
Now, meanwhile, back in the Bev world, after I get the, release from Ian Rolfini and everything from Shelter, that dissipates. I'm in the studio. By this time, I have a manager. I have a manager I really was in love with, to be honest with you. I don't mean like in a physical way.
Right.
But her name was Judy Glover. Her husband was Roger Glover, the bass player from Deep Purple. But she came correct, right? And the fact was we just kind of hit it off right away. She came to the studio, and I forget even who literally pulled her coat, but I do remember how it happened, because at that time I was rubbing shoulders, or let's say running around with John Waite, from the singer from the Babies that had gone solo, and he had this big song out on the radio called Missing You. I think it was like a #1 record, to be honest with you. It was a big record. But he was a British vocalist,
Gotcha.
Had this group called the Babies, which was kind of like, they were like a thing for a minute in England. He went solo. And she was managing him.
Okay.
I think I was friends with, he had a tour manager named Anthony Recasino, a guy we all just used to call T. And T was one of these ubiquitous individuals that seemed to be like everywhere at once. He was just the man on the scene.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when you hear that expression where Russ never sleeps, that was T.
I got it. Yeah.
There was a reason. But we'll get into that. That's a whole nother sidebar, right?
No, that's fair.
But T was just one of those guys.
Yeah.
That seemed to know everybody, know every place. Everybody knew him. You know what I'm saying? And when I fell into his so-called jet stream, it was like no barriers, all velvet ropes came open. Kind of became part of my social norm. So it was John that introduced me to Judy, and Judy came to the studio to listen to the demos after she heard about me, per se, from John, right? And there's no better place to demonstrate a demo than in a legitimate world-class recording studio, right? Because everything just blows your hair back, right? So she subsequently wasted no time, and she took me to the Apple Bank about a week later and opened up a line of credit for me to record with impunity.
Wow.
Not that I even needed it from the studio, but the budget that it afforded me enabled me to hire hired guns to come into the studio and participate in continuing to build tracks.
Right.
So we had been doing that for the year subsequent to the CBGB's debut.
Is this the same?
Because CBGB's was the first place where people had recognized me as Banzai Kik.
I see.
Right? They put the two things together.
Yeah.
Right? Because otherwise, I was like a studio project. But that CBGB's event kind of put me on the map as like a live performer. And then subsequent to that, there were other spin-off BRC events where I would, appear as, a vocalist singing what ostensibly would have probably been my first single, a song called Noisy Music. I've got a videotape somewhere of Vernon Reid on guitar and Will Calhoun on drums and me, and I can't vividly recall who was on bass at the time, but there was a version of me and Vernon doing like Noisy Music at Prospect Park in Brooklyn in front of about 1,000 people,
I'm gonna try
which
to.
is pretty cool. I probably have it in a pile of compartments
Not
that my
on
wife
YouTube or
has. My
anything?
wife has sequestered all of
Yeah.
my stuff to a corner.
We need to get somebody to digitize all that and catalog it, man.
Well, trust me, it's in the forefront of my mind.
Okay.
Right. But my point being, she was very enthusiastic about that.
Mm-hmm.
And she was very confident that we were going to get some sort of major outcome. You know what I mean? But as I was waiting for this determination from Ian Rolfini and Shelter, I got news from her that fall that she had developed like a cancer diagnosis, which was, shattering to me because we had a personal rapport.
Right.
Now, trust me, managers have always kind of been the thorn in my side for the duration of my entire career, with the exception of one individual from Austin. His name was Ron Backer, who later became a pretty noteworthy executive at MCA years later.
Okay.
But in my formative years, I vividly recall that managers were just really kind of a hit and miss, stumbling block type equation in my career. You know, I was always looking for some sort of real powerful entity to come in like a force to just move mountains and open doors and just bring opportunities to fruition. The epitome of that would have been someone similar to the strength of a person like Bill Ham, who managed ZZ Top, right? Because he was like a force in the industry.
I see.
Right? ZZ Top did not become ZZ Top by accident.
Yeah, I got you.
It was the right culmination of talent and administrative prowess.
Yep.
You dig what I mean? And that's literally, those two things are always hand in glove. Don't ever think it's just one thing driving the whole train.
Right.
Right.
I got you.
So I say that, of course, with 20/20 hindsight, but that literally has always kind of been like my big, if I had the Aladdin lamp, I want that managerial direction.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Because it takes a lot of fog out of the equation.
I see.
Plus, I was kind of wild in those days, if I'm being honest. You
need
know?
some accountability?
Well, it was just that I was, I could have been viewed as borderline unmanageable because I was just so headstrong.
I see.
Right? Because I'm literally like a street person, meaning I'm trying to get from today to tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't have any fallback.
Right.
Like my family is not going to rescue me. There is no golden parachute stashed away for me to fail comfortably.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like this is literally me walking a tightrope because I can see life on the other side. If I can just get over that bridge from here to there, I can see it.
Yeah.
Especially in New York, because now I'm moving in these circles to where people are doing it.
There's somewhat of a glass ceiling over
Yeah,
there.
I mean, how do you think I feel? I go to the power station. I'm hanging out with Nile Rodgers. He takes me to the garage, and he's got like 7 exotic cars.
Yeah.
Mr. Rogers, Mr. Rogers, Mr. Rogers, Mr. Rogers.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And you're trying to figure out what you're going to eat for dinner that night.
Well, I'm just trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a reality to that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I stepped in a penthouse of Keith Richards. I saw it.
Yeah.
And that's not even his big house.
No. Yeah. That's his Wednesday house.
That's his downtown crash pad. You know what I mean? His big house is out in Connecticut someplace. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? My point is, in New York City, that stuff crystallizes. And especially when you're moving around the city, right? And you're walking up and down like Park Avenue or Fifth Avenue, you know what I'm saying? And you're seeing all these fine, beautiful clothes and all these beautiful girls walking up and down the side. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you see all these limos like buzzing to and fro here and there, right?
Yeah.
Down on 42nd Street, and you see these, when you see the beautiful people, let's say I'm in front of the Plaza Hotel and I see Cary Grant like come out of Trader Vic's.
Yeah.
and he walks right past me and says, "Hello, how you doing?" Like that sort of thing. You know what I mean? I'm like, bro,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
It was
It's like-
very tangible. I mean,
These people are living this way. Needless to say, I was motivated. That's my point. So the managerial equation was a big part of it. It was a big thing to get.
mhm.
The music was not problematic because up to that point I'd been blessed. You know what I mean?
Right.
Being in a situation with Tim Hatfield, the media sound facility, the music is sounding great. I'm full of inspiration. There's no dry spots in my creativity, right? It's only going to get better.
Yeah.
But then Judy falls out of the equation. It's like, oh my God, so now I'm back to what? A big question mark. So we fast forward into the fall, and two things happen. Vernon invites me to see the Bad Brains had come out of hiatus. They were playing at this venue called the Ritz, which was a great venue in Manhattan, legendary venue on the lower west side of Manhattan. And the Ritz was just a classic theater type setting, right? So, I mean, I think the capacity of the Ritz was probably, I'm going to say 2,500. It wasn't massive, but it was big. And the Bad Brains were booked to play there. Hadn't played a show in 3 years. It's totally sold out. Vernon's like, "You want to go see Bad Brains?" I'm like, "Yeah, I want to see the Bad Brains." I've never seen them
Okay.
live. I'd met Dr. No, but I'd never seen the band. So he takes me down. We go to the Ritz. Of course, we're on the guest list. Of course, we got the VIP passes and all that. So we go back to the dressing room to meet the band, or at least I'm going to meet the band. Vernon knows everybody. And I had met Dr. No at the CBGB situation. And he's like, "Hey, man, I want you to meet our manager, Anthony." Their manager's name is Anthony County. So he introduced me to Anthony. We talk, and he goes, "Anthony, this guy's got some blazing music." That's what he told him. And Anthony's like, "Oh, yeah, like that sort of thing, blah, blah, blah." Now, this is pre-iPhone, right? So everything is like,
Yeah.
writing things down on napkins and all this sort of stuff, right? He gives me his number, and hope you enjoy the show. Bring me a tape, that sort of thing. It's down on Carmine Street. So I'm just like, okay, great. So the Bad Brains go on to play, and it's so explosive. And if you haven't heard them, you don't even have a frame of reference of what I'm talking about. I'm telling you that these guys are like the most revered influence in punk rock and hardcore heavy metal, or what we call thrash,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when you start talking to people like Henry Rollins, like Black Flag,
Yeah.
they bow down to the temple of the Bad Brains,
I see.
literally, and they will tell you that. Like the Red Hot Chili Peppers will tell you the Bad Brains are like the apex.
Okay.
The reason being is because they were literally like a jazz fusion outlet before they discovered punk rock. So they were technically elevated.
Yeah.
And then they heard the Sex Pistols and they did 180 degrees. And so we want to do that.
Yeah.
And so they're from Washington, D.C.,
Okay.
right? Which is where Henry Rollins is from, right? And so they literally kind of became like what the Ramones are to New York City, the Bad Brains are to Washington, D.C.
I see.
To the Washington, D.C. underground or punk rock scene, right? Reason being is because they can play faster than any other band that you've ever heard play fast. I don't know who you think the fastest thing is that you've ever heard, but I'll give you an example. When my guitar player, Chris Bailey, brought me a single of the Bad Brains, a single called, the song was called Pay to Come,
Okay.
right? he dropped the needle on the single, and I said, you got the wrong speed. This is on 78 or some shit. He's like, no,
Wow.
no,
Yeah.
it ain't. This is 45. It's like, what? I said, you got it. I started laughing. That's going like, you got to be kidding.
Yeah.
Because that's
there ain't no way.
humanly impossible.
Wow.
What I'm listening to, right? When you listen to it, you will be laughing that I'm telling you this now because you will get exactly the same reaction.
Okay.
Like, what? But not only that, they can flip the script, like at the drop of a hat, they can flip into hardcore reggae dub.
Really?
Authentic. They can turn around and sound like Burning Spear or, the Gladiators. You know what I'm saying? Like hardcore dub reggae, right? And they pivot throughout the course of their set. And then they've got this super charismatic frontman named HR. His name is Paul Hudson, but he's adopted the name Hunting Rod. But he's big time into Rastafarianism and even like Ethiopian ideologies of Christianity. But I'm just telling you, this album, Eye Against Eye, they were debuting that, and it's a monster. It's a monster album. So I've never seen an audience like thrash that hard in my entire life, up to that point or since. It was literally like I was watching their set like from a balcony, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking down at the pit.
Yeah.
And the pit literally looks like a whirlpool.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
Like an egg beater. You know what I mean?
Yep. Oh yeah.
Kids were losing it, right?
God.
And the lead singer is crowd surfing and the whole nine. It's just everything's going ape wild. And they're loud like Motorhead.
In your face.
Peel your cap back.
Loud.
Yeah. So that was a great experience. And then I met with their manager about a week later, because they were talking about getting ready to go on a tour, this, that, and the other thing. And so I went down to Carmine Street in the West Village and I met with him at his apartment and played him some tracks on a beatbox. And he was like, man, this sounds awesome. Like that sort of thing. And one thing led to another. A few weeks went by and Anthony calls me back, like kind of out of the blue. He goes, I got a plan. I said, what's the plan? He goes, well, I want you to meet some people. So he calls me down again to his apartment. And I meet this lady named Lynn Robinson, and she turns out she's a publicist. And she basically has been working with a litany of people like Bob Dylan and this, that, and the other. And she gave me a short list of her CV, her resume. And she's from South Africa. So she's got this interesting accent. I couldn't quite put a finger on it, but she told me she's like from Johannesburg. Well, South Africa's got a bad rap for like apartheid, right?
Oh yeah.
And as a matter of fact, earlier that when I first got to New York, that was a big thing that was going on with Steven Van Zandt, because he had this whole thing about I ain't gonna play Sun City, right? There was this big thing on MTV. It was like a protest against like Sun City, which was like a big resort. And they were offering like lucrative paydays for these artists, for these Western artists to come to South Africa and play Sun
I
City.
see.
You know
I
what I'm
see.
saying?
Yeah.
But because of the apartheid, they started boycotting.
Mm.
And little Steven Van Zandt put a whole thing together where he had like
Yeah.
this whole broad community of eclectic artists, you know,
Right.
from the hip hop community and rock, this, that, and the other thing. And everybody was like, I ain't gonna play Sun City. It was a big deal. So it kind of hit me with a little bit of a twinge, you know, when she said that.
Yeah.
But, you know, all looks are not alike and all holes are not a crack. You know what I mean? What intrigued me was she told me that she had a long tenure with a programming mogul named Lee Abrams. And again, this is taking you out of date, but in the 70s and 80s in particular, that's when AOR programming, the concept of adult-oriented radio, became like a format. Like these programmers had the power of a playlist that they would cherry pick to say,
Yeah.
this is the top 40. And it would save the program managers in various markets the trouble of having to sort out like what is going to be good for sponsors. So Lee Abrams was kind of like the mastermind of that whole thing, right? Because he had relationships like with all these DJs across the country. And of course, you know how it always has been, right? It's like DJs are the tastemakers.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not a fluke that certain markets have responded to local talent in a way that was kind of like, well, where'd these guys come from? Well, the DJ just decided to put it on. You know what I'm saying? The label says, well, play this song. But the DJ is like, nah, I like this deep track right here. I'm playing that song.
Right.
And that's the song that catches fire. And then the label has to play catch up. You know what I mean? And you've had situations where just local talent, you know what I'm saying, started to catch a buzz because the DJ was favorable to that particular artist on a humanistic level.
Yeah.
Maybe he had seen him, or maybe he knew him, or maybe he got high with him, or whatever the situation
That's
was.
some level of connection.
But if you want to take it all the way back, you know, the old school thing was about the payola, right? Like you roll up on the DJ with an envelope and like, I need you to play this.
Here's an
record.
LP and a white envelope.
Here's your $500 or whatever. Just keep it rolling. You know what I mean? And of course, you get arrested for that.
Yeah.
In theory, but not really.
Yeah.
Anyway, she had a relationship with Lee Abrams. That registered with me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then, of course, he had another colleague named Andy Griggs. Andy was from England. And Andy was managing a group. I'm sorry, he was managing an artist named Michael Monroe. And if you recall, I sent you a link to this group called Hanoi Rocks from Finland.
I read that article this morning.
Who were a thing in the 80s that had kind of blown up out of the British rock scene. MTV had a show called The Headbangers Ball. And Hanoi Rocks was like a European vanguard of that. The thing that kind of derailed Hanoi Rocks was that they had lost their drummer, Razzle Dingley, right? In this kind of a freak drunk driving accident with Vince Neil from Motley Crue. They were on a party binge, you know, whatever, a Ferrari or some shit, and they kind of just got carried away and went through an intersection, ran through a red light and killed some people, including the drummer from Hanoi Rocks. Okay, so in the aftermath of that, this guy Andy was managing Michael Monroe, the lead singer, who was kind of starting his own solo career. And he was based in New York. So that's how I met Andy.
Okay.
The conversation went along the lines of, they were a production company called Shake the Earth. They wanted to offer me a management contract. And it looked like it was a good setup because they were connected, you know, on so many different levels. Anthony being manager of the Bad Brains, you know, he's got enough clout and expertise to help me, you know, make good decisions with, you know, booking agencies and this, that, and the other thing, you know what I'm saying? Once we kind of got into the live performance aspect of it. And I liked him personally, you know what I'm saying? We had good kismet energy. And Andy's expertise was promoted to me as tour management. Like, you know, when it was actually time to go out on the road, like Andy would be like my day-to-day handler.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
I got you.
And Anthony would like handle like my record contracts and my publishing contracts and merchandising and all of the other amenities that go along with having a national or international scale deal, right? And Lynn would be like my publicist, which is to say,
building your team.
Yeah. So that was the first time somebody presented a full package like that to me. About a month later, I got a phone call from Lynn, the publicist, and she said, "Hey, Bev," she says, "Hey, I had a conversation with Jack Douglas the other day. I think he would like to meet you." And I said, "Are you talking about Jack Douglas from Aerosmith? Jack Douglas?" Because I knew a lot about Jack Douglas because I was a big fan of Aerosmith. And not only that, but a lot of work that he would do. It just turns out that, as I told you before, back in those days, right, you get a record, an album, you're reading everything like, well, who produced this thing or whatever? And you see Jack Douglas's name come up time and time and time and time again, right? And most famously because he was like John Lennon's producer of choice up to the point where Lennon was assassinated, right? But I was really impacted by his work with Aerosmith. Because Aerosmith was kind of like what I call a role model band of mine. I mean, when I'm thinking about Banzai Kik, I'm thinking along the lines of Aerosmith / Zeppelin / AC/DC.
I see.
From day one. Like
Right.
I'm thinking like that's the DNA.
Yeah.
Now, of course, we've got the advantage of Chris Bailey, who's like completely fresh, completely eclectic. And Chris is not writing in a template based on any of those things. But for me, in terms of presentation,
creative direction, maybe.
Just in terms of like presentation.
Okay. Gotcha.
Right? Like I'm thinking, okay, because you got to understand, there's this new wave of hard rock music that's just burgeoning, right? Because on the West Coast, you've got all of that going on, but you've also got on the East Coast, got Bon Jovi that's coming up strong. And of course, now by this time, David Lee Roth has gone solo from Van Halen. Van Halen's got Sammy Hagar, you know what I'm saying? And then you've still got this whole other influence coming from England, like Def Leppard, and you've got Iron Maiden, and you've got the Scorpions, you know what I'm saying? And you've got this whole new thing coming on the West Coast, like the thrash thing is starting to happen with like Metallica.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is another generation, another generational segment. You dig what I'm saying?
So this was the early 80s?
Yeah, we're literally talking 1987. All of this is in 1 year that I'm talking to you about. All of these things is all happening since February. So from February at CBGB's to October, I've gone through a false start with a label and a new production company with the prospect of a label with Jack Douglas.
Wow.
And then what I omitted to tell you was that in July the 4th of that year, my mother shot and killed my dad in Wichita Falls, Texas.
Thanks for listening. Know someone we should talk to? Give us a shout on Instagram at Austin Music People. Tell your friends, tell your family, and get out there and support Austin music.